Good afternoon. We're coming on the air live from the Republican National Convention this afternoon right here in Milwaukee. Day one of the RNC already making headlines. And there is breaking news at this hour from Milwaukee because just moments ago, former President Donald Trump revealing his pick for vice president. Senator JD Vance, now his running mate. Trump making his choice from a short list from 4 or 5 finalists in the end. This is the first time in 36 years that a presidential candidate has announced a running mate during the convention. Of course, the convention just getting underway. The last time this happened, 1988, George H.W. Bush introducing Dan Quayle. That was actually during a rally. But while the convention was underway, I think it was day 2 of the convention back then. So many decades later, Donald Trump announcing on day 1 of the convention that his running mate will be JD Vance of Ohio. I'm joined here in the broadcast booth by Martha Raddatz, John Carl, our team on the floor, Rachel Scott and Terry Moran. But John Carl, first to you, your reaction on the choice of JD Vance.
Well, first of all, I believe this will be the youngest running mate if he becomes vice president, the youngest vice president since Vice President Breckinridge, who served Buchanan back before the Civil War. So he's only 39 years old. He's been in the United States Senate for less than 2 years, elected in 2022. But he is somebody who is extremely popular among what you might call the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, a conservative firebrand, came on the scene with a best-selling book, of course, Hillbilly Elegy, yep. Which was seen as a way of kind of explaining the Trump phenomenon. But back then, this is somebody who was strongly anti-Trump in 2016. He was very critical of Trump, but after Trump won, he came on, as a big Trump supporter, and this will electrify the MAGA wing of this convention, which I think is the convention.
And I'm not even sure people on the floor recognize that the announcement has been made because this is roll call, also another significant moment. We'll talk more about JD Vance here in just a moment. Let's take you live down to the floor and let's listen. This is the roll call. We're getting closer to the state of Florida, which I believe, given the math so far, will be the state that puts Donald Trump over the top. We're on Massachusetts right now. Let's listen in and get a sense of the energy on the floor.
Pursuant to the announcement of the delegation and the rules and procedures of this convention, Massachusetts, 40 votes, President Trump.
The roll call, Massachusetts, on to Indiana next, Georgia, Utah, Maryland, Texas, Ohio, JD Vance representing that state as the junior senator. So as we stick with these pictures on the floor, Martha Raddatz also here with me. And Martha, the selection of JD Vance, Donald Trump has actually said in the past that the selection of a running mate really isn't that important. But he has signaled in recent days that given what the country has witnessed, just Saturday, the attempted assassination of a former president spells out how important all of these choices really are. We've actually seen it for Biden-Harris as well, as people debate whether or not President Biden is up to the job for a second term. A lot of eyes have been focused on the Vice President, Kamala Harris. So in this particular year, perhaps the choice of VP looms even larger than what we've seen in modern politics.
It certainly does. And after this weekend and after what happened, it is a very, very critical choice. You have to wonder whether Donald Trump decided days ago on JD Vance or after that assassination attempt. But he's got this young man, as John said, 39 years old. He will be a player in the Republican Party for decades to come. And he not only understands Trump's base, he came from that base. His memoir is about him and his life story. He grew up in poverty. He said, the idea is we have grim statistics. If we are lucky, we will get off welfare. If we're unlucky, we'll die of a heroin overdose. J.D. Vance was raised by his grandparents in part, joined the Marine Corps, fought in Iraq, and then went to Yale Law School. So he is an extraordinary success story. I interviewed him in 2016 about that book, Hillbilly Elegy, and John's exactly right. He wasn't saying nice things about Donald Trump at the time, not at all. But he really has explained himself and his transformation into a Trump supporter quite eloquently.
You're absolutely right on that point, and he'll face that question moving forward now that he is on the national stage beside Donald Trump. But in answering that question to ABC News, in fact, he talked about watching Donald Trump at work as president, speaking to his record and saying the record speaks volumes here that Donald Trump should be given another chance when it comes to the economy, foreign policy, and some of the other key parts of his administration's accomplishments as JD Vance sees it. Again, the Ohio senator has been chosen as Donald Trump's running mate. Major breaking headline out of the Republican convention already. What you're watching live right now, roll call on the floor. Terry Moran is down on the floor, I believe, near the state of Texas. Unclear how soon we'll see Senator JD Vance, but perhaps it'll be right around the roll call in Texas, Terry.
That's what we're hoping for, no question about it, David. And earlier, this aisle was cleared. It isn't clear now, so we may be wrong about it. But just on JD Vance, that flip-flop as he was accused of performing from being a very fierce Trump critic to being a strong Trump supporter. He explained it once this way. He said that he had to make a choice between the people that had gotten him to Yale Law School, to venture capital and major American law firms, and the people that he came from. And he said that's who he wanted to represent. Now, that may be political opportunism, but anybody who's read Hillbilly Elegy or seen that movie or talked to him about it knows that he didn't want to forget where he came from, no matter what kind of success he had. And here we go. It does look like JD Vance is coming down the aisle right now. Oh, no, this is Donald Trump Jr. Sorry about that.
There you see Donald Trump's son, Don Jr., Eric Trump there as well. Do we see JD Vance in that scrum of people?
Larry Hogan.
We know that after Maryland, Texas and Ohio comes next, and I would suspect that as you get pretty close to his home state of Ohio, you're going to see JD Vance.
Yeah, I would suspect. And by the way, Donald Trump Jr. was among the most vocal in Trump's inner circle, pushing for JD Vance. I mean, really leading an all-out campaign to say JD Vance was the person that his father should pick. There were some in Trump's inner circle who, right until I think as early as this morning, were pushing the former president to pick somebody else. But this is Donald Trump Jr.'s candidate, close friend, and somebody he's been pushing for a long time.
JD Vance, of course, we have not seen yet here on the convention floor in Milwaukee. We are seeing the children of Donald Trump. Some of them, Don Jr., obviously, Eric Trump. Tiffany Trump, I was told, was in the crowd. There she is. You can see her right there. Here to support their father when the math sets him over the top as the nominee. They're talking about Texas now. Ohio is next, and of course Ohio, the state that JD Vance represents. Obviously two senators there, one a Democrat, Sherrod Brown, the other JD Vance, the junior senator. It was one of the most highly sought-after Senate seats in the country, that seat from Ohio. A lot of attention paid on it, a lot of money spent from both sides, and J.D. Vance obviously winning that seat. I want to go to John Santucci, who reports on Donald Trump for us, has for many years. And John, when did J.D. Vance get this call?
David, it sounds like it's a call that came, believe it or not, with just in the hour. I'm told by my sources that up until just a few hours ago, J.D. Vance had not received any formal call, any formal offer from former President Donald Trump.
Hey, John, let me just interrupt you for 1 second, John. I want to get right down to Rachel Scott, who's with Don Jr. Rachel, can you get a question to the former president's son?
Yeah, Mr. Trump, the reaction just came in. It is going to be Senator J.D. Vance. What is your reaction to this?
I'm incredibly excited. JD's become a really good friend of mine over the last few years. I think he helps us across the board in so many of the swing states that are going to be so critical. His story is just an incredible one. It's the American dream. It's about total success. He's just going to be an incredible pick.
The former president endorsed J.D. Vance in his Senate race. It was really a bright spot for Republicans and what was really a disappointing year. What are you hoping that he brings to this ticket?
The same energy he's brought Republicans in the United States Senate, I want to see on this ticket, and I think he's going to do that for sure.
You're very close to Senator J.D. Vance. You said there's a lot of acquaintances in politics, but you consider him a very close friend. This has been quite a public audition process, vetting process, to be Donald Trump's running mate. What do you make that it's now him?
Well, I'm super excited because I know the man, I know the character, I know his resolve. There's no weaknesses there. I'm just super excited about it.
Thank you so much, sir, for the time. I really appreciate it. Well, there you have it. That is the former president's son. This is a close confidant of his. As you can see, it's really crowded here as the former president's family. I'm going to get back just a little bit to give them a little bit space here, David, as I toss it back to you. But a very, very happy Donald Trump Jr., a very close confidant to Senator JD Vance, overjoyed by this choice, saying it's exactly what this ticket needs, David.
Rachel Scott getting the first interview with the Don Jr. there on the floor of the Republican convention here, post the breaking headline that JD Vance has officially been selected as Donald Trump's running mate this November, as Donald Trump is about to clinch the nomination officially. Roll call as we're watching it play out here. Wisconsin comes next, New York, and then Florida, which of course is Donald Trump's home state now. The home state of Florida expected to provide the math to put Donald Trump over the top. And Martha Raddatz, we knew from our own reporting that Don Jr. Was encouraging his father to make this pick.
Yes, he was. And this is a big win for Don Jr. He was talking about, of course, JD Vance's background. He was talking about his experience. And I think probably one more quote stuck out. What JD Vance has said that Donald Trump needs in a vice president is someone who won't stab him in the back.
And we know precisely what he's talking about, given the very real tension between Donald Trump and Mike Pence, certainly post January 6th here on full display. John?
You know, what's fascinating about this is the second time J.D. Vance in 2 years has been in an apprentice-style competition to be chosen by Donald Trump. In that Senate race in 2022, there were half dozen Republican candidates, and Trump had them all come down to Mar-a-Lago to, make the case that he should endorse them. Any one of them could have won, and that's a conservative state. The Republican was likely to win. J.D. Vance had to overcome the fact that he had said incredibly negative things about Donald Trump in 2016. He had said things like, I can't stomach Trump. I think he's noxious. I was never a Trump guy, never liked him. Trump is unfit for our nation's highest office. He wrote that in a New York Times op-ed in 2016. So he had to overcome that to Trump, and he did. He got Trump's endorsement. And let's be honest, that's why J.D. Vance was in the Senate in the first place. Now he's gone through another process, and Trump has chosen him yet again.
Elise Stefanik from New York. Let's listen.
President Donald J. Trump will be the first Republican in a generation who will win New York State. It is my honor, as representative for New York's 21st Congressional District, House Republican Conference Chair, on behalf of the 91 New York delegates to the Republican National Convention, we proudly cast all 91 votes for President Donald J. Trump.
Pursuant to the announcement of the delegation and the rules and procedures of this convention, New York, 91 votes.
Of course, New York, Donald Trump's longtime home. Florida coming next.
Florida.
His new home in recent years. And this will be a key moment here at this convention. Let's listen.
Florida, 125 delegates.
Madam Secretary and everybody in this great city, on behalf of our entire family and on behalf of the 125 delegates in the unbelievable state of Florida, we hereby nominate every single one of them for the greatest president that's ever lived, and that's Donald J. Trump. Hereby declaring him the Republican nominee for President of the United States of America.
Eric Trump putting his father over the top with the math here at the Republican convention with his wife, Lara Trump, Don Jr.
The delegation and the rules and procedures of this convention, Florida, 125 votes, President Trump.
And there you see it up on the big screen over the top. Says it all. Donald J. Trump will be the Republican nominee for president for the Republican Party. Obviously, we all knew that, but it is an extraordinary headline nonetheless. Cool in the Gang celebration, right? Playing here in Milwaukee. And Martha Raddatz, you can't really look at Donald Trump's children without thinking what this past 48 hours has been like for this family. The country witnessed it. The world witnessed it. The assassination attempt on their father. They are here in Milwaukee. Donald Trump arrived Sunday evening. He said he considered delaying his trip, but said that he would not allow a would-be assassin to change any of the plans here. And you can sense the real energy in this room.
Extraordinary energy. And watching that family walk in, watching the Trump sons and daughter walk towards their father's nomination and being able to announce that, and knowing that on Saturday there were moments that they know they could have lost him. How close that would-be assassin got to killing their father. So this has been an extraordinary, unprecedented week for that family, for that country, and for now, it is for them a great celebration and something you can clearly see. They are, in effect, raising their fists as well.
And as we continue to look at these live pictures, I just want to bring John Santucci back into the conversation. Let's listen in here, John.
We will now continue with the roll call of the state.
As they continue with the roll call, John, one of the things that you had mentioned to me in the moments after what we all witnessed as a country Saturday afternoon in Western Pennsylvania, it took some real trying to get Donald Trump in touch with his children, his adult children, who were wondering, they were not there in Pennsylvania with their father. There was some time that went by before they knew if their father was okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting, David. Actually, my understanding is that some of the first communications Donald Trump's children were able to make were to former members of his Secret Service detail. Remember, Donald Trump has been a Secret Service protectee since late 2015. His children, when he won the presidency in 2016, also received Secret Service protection. And that relationship, David, that the children formed with their detail was the first way they were able to actually learn that their father was okay. They were seeing it play out on TV over and over again. And it was a smaller group of aides that were around Donald Trump at that rally this past Saturday, David. Today, though, obviously a very different story. Donald Trump's two adult sons, Eric and Don Jr. there. We talked earlier about Donald Trump Jr. and the force for which he has been behind JD Vance to be the running mate on this ticket. What's going to happen later this week, though, David, frankly, has not happened in a number of years. What we're going to see eventually is all members of the family under the roof. Yeah.
Another moment here, John. Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, being booed here.
Getting booed.
John Carl booed here in the hall. He fully endorsed Donald Trump in this nomination, but as you know, it was Mitch McConnell who stood on that floor in the hours after January 6th and said Donald Trump bears responsibility for what played out in front of the world.
It was Mitch McConnell who went 3.5 years without speaking to Donald Trump, suggesting he could be prosecuted. Donald Trump insulting his wife with a frankly racist insult, even though his wife had served in his cabinet for 4 years. So that's quite a moment to see Mitch McConnell ever the Republican. I don't think he ever thought he would be in a situation where he would be on a floor casting votes for Donald Trump. This is an extraordinary moment in the history of this party, David. I mean, we have to just put this in a larger context. Donald Trump, now for the third consecutive time, the Republican nominee. When he left the White House in 2021, disgraced by what happened in January 6th, facing an impeachment trial in the United States Senate, where 7 senators from his own party voted to convict him, and others like McConnell, who didn't vote to convict, made it clear they felt he was responsible for what happened on January 6th. For him to come back the way he has, as the dominant figure in this party, it may be the greatest comeback story in the history of American politics. I don't even know what would be close.
Yeah, and regardless of where you feel, where you stand, where you are politically, this country, and Terry Moran is down on the floor. And Terry, you witnessed there firsthand that swift change in temperature there on the floor when the folks realized it was Mitch McConnell who was speaking next.
Yeah, it got real cold down here, David. There were some people trying to hush the boos because it doesn't look good, but those boos were from the heart, right? Mitch McConnell is considered persona non grata, as John Carl was just talking about, because he did criticize Donald Trump. And one of the things, the feel down here walking around this afternoon is different. It's different than 2016. It's different than 2020. These people, they're no longer outsiders, insurgents, deplorables. They know and they believe that the events of the past couple of weeks have confirmed through destiny, through the hand of God, as some of them have said to me, that they made the right choice back in 2016, that this is their destiny to be the governing party in this country. It's a different feel, a more certain feel here than it has been in past conventions that nominated Donald Trump. Something's happened.
Terry Moran on the floor of the convention, where he'll be throughout the course of these next 4 days. Terry, thank you. Also on the convention floor, we want to check back in one more time here with Rachel Scott before we sign off. Rachel, we have just learned, ABC News has learned, that we will hear from Senator JD Vance at some point today. Of course, when we do, we'll come back on the air. But you were the first to get contact, if you will, with Donald Trump's family, his son Don Jr. right there on the floor. And it was Don Jr., we know, who leaned in heavily and said, in so many words, Dad, this is your pick.
Exactly, David. And Donald Trump Jr. has said himself that there's a lot of acquaintances in politics, that there's actually very few close friends. And he calls Senator JD Vance a very close friend. Sources tell ABC News, including our own John Santucci, that Donald Trump Jr. himself was pushing for this. He wanted to see him on the ticket with the former president. Also very striking here, I just talked to Lara Trump just moments ago, who is obviously the daughter-in-law of the former president and heading up the RNC as well. I asked her what this moment means, right, coming off of this attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. She said this is all about bringing the party together. She says today is about unity. David.
Rachel Scott live on the floor of this convention hall here in Milwaukee. So again, you're watching ABC News live coverage of the breaking news from here in Milwaukee. We have learned just moments ago that Donald Trump is now the official nominee. Over the top is the term that they use on these convention floors when they hit the math. He is now officially the Republican nominee in this presidential election. At the same time, and Donald Trump knows timing, he did announce that his running mate will be JD Vance, the senator from Ohio, the Republican senator, of course. There were a number of names in the end, down to 2 or 3. Governor Burgum of North Dakota. We also had Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida. There were people within Donald Trump's inner circle pushing for Marco Rubio, we learned, right up until the very end as well. We know in recent days, Donald Trump said publicly, if Marco Rubio isn't my pick for VP, he'll have a place in my administration, perhaps in my cabinet. We'll see if that bears out if Donald Trump is successful come November. But for now, we know the ticket. It's Donald Trump and JD Vance from Ohio.